Hello, and welcome to Musings from the Mystics. I'm Marnie.
And I'm Natalie. We are your guides on this crazy and sometimes tumultuous journey we call the human experience.
Each episode will share our musings about the current energetic climate,
how we're navigating these times,
and tips to help you get the most out of your journey.
So join us to be awakened, empowered,
and expand into conscious action. Welcome to the final-ish mission, and we'll explain why there's an ish, on the quest for the true you. This is the 10th episode on this series and the final one. So we're mashing the last bits of information together to sort of tie it all up.
We'll say to complete the puzzle.
To
your
complete,
last pieces.
Yes, to complete the puzzle on this never-ending journey, which is the reason it's the final-ish.
Never, ever ending journey.
Never, ever, yes. And so today we're going to be talking about who are you really, outside of the stories and outside of the preconceptions about yourself. And this is an important aspect, I think, to really dive into. We're going to talk about dealing with criticism because, honey, they are not going to like the authentic you.
No.
And then making room for your authentic self. What does that mean? Which, some things have to go.
Yes.
For sure. And then the quest continues. So that's the format for today of the last final pieces. We want to tie it all up. And we'll explain why at the end, why we are tying it all up today. So who are you really? I think one of the biggest things I know that I deal with as a coach is the stories people have bought about themselves or really hold on to, the roles and the characteristics that they've either been labeled and accepted or have taken on because they thought they were supposed to or should, that act like a cage.
Yes, because they're so limiting. And most people don't realize how limiting they truly are.
Yeah. So we want to talk about that. And we can just dive into things like I have a client who was diagnosed, which if you know me at all, Western medicine, I don't have a whole lot of faith in. And one of my really big soapboxes is stop diagnosing people. Stop putting them into a box. I hate this about our culture and society. So anyway, she was diagnosed ADHD. And I think initially when people receive a diagnosis, there's sort of a sigh of relief that happens, right? Okay, there's nothing really terribly wrong with me. This is something that I have and they own it, right? I have this thing. But then I think just like anything else, it becomes a cage. I can't do that because I have this. I'm not able to pursue this thing because I have this diagnosis. I can't because of this. And I hate that.
Well, and it also becomes their excuse, too.
And it becomes their excuse, right?
So
which was where I was going with that, right?
Right. There's
so
two
as soon
sides.
As you buy into it, then it becomes a limitation. And then we use it as an excuse to not do it. And so one of the biggest questions that I love to ask my clients when they're resisting and, well, I can't do that because I have this. I can't be in that. I can't meditate because I have ADHD and I have to be medicated, or I can't do that because I have anxiety, or I can't do that because I have this physical ailment or condition or whatever. And I say to them, are you arguing for your limitation? You're arguing for your limitation versus striving, fighting, arguing for your ability to do whatever the hell you want to do outside of that diagnosis, role, characteristic. So, and this is really hard for people to hear, I think, and you've probably had this exact same, as she rolls her eyes, this exact same, we come to this confrontation because people are so attached to their diagnosis or their role or their characteristic or the limitation that they believe they cannot do something else.
Yes, and the clear sign, at least for several of my clients, is they come to me for a reason. They come looking for some sort of guidance or help, and I'll give them some ideas, and then I get the but.
Yeah.
That is your key indication that you are arguing for your limitations.
Yeah, and you're attached to it. You're so attached to it, it literally has blinded you to possibilities. And I think what's really important about this conversation about authentic self is the minute you have a limitation or you're in a cage, there's no way you're going to reach your potential authentic self. There's no way. You cannot be attached to the limitation, to the diagnosis, to anything, that role or characteristic, and fulfill your potential authentic self. Because the chances are your authentic self has nothing to do with limitations. So this client I have that was diagnosed ADHD, we've come into this conversation of, okay, first of all, stop saying I have it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we have come, medical science has come a little bit further, and now they call it neurodivergent. Again, why must we have a category? Why must we label it so that someone has to feel different? Why can't it be this amazing capacity that their brain has? I think it's phenomenal that someone who can multitask in their mind in a way that other people can't.
Right.
That they are generally incredibly creative. They're usually very intelligent, but this diagnosis puts them in this box of, well, I can't, versus what can I do with this superpower?
Right.
Right. So I think it's so important that we need to become aware of the stories we're carrying about ourselves. If there's a point in any aspect of your life where you think, I can't, but no, I have this, I don't have that, could also be the opposite. Correct. I don't have that. To look at that. But what if you did? What if you could? Just at least open to the question, what if you could?
Right. And who is it for someone that doesn't know all the ins and outs of you to put you in that category? Mm-hmm. And clear example is, I don't typically talk a lot about myself, but I
really, we hadn't noticed, Natalie.
I got a scary diagnosis last year. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And my body was swelling, and I had all these limitations. I couldn't make a fist. I couldn't do certain things. And knowing everything I knew, I was like, oh yeah, I'm above this. I can clear it myself, no problem. And I couldn't. I was having trouble. So I went to a doctor, and he said, well, even though it doesn't show up in your blood work, this is what you have. And I'm like, that's interesting. It's not really but this is, well, I mean, I do have the symptoms. So he gave me medication. Okay, I felt a little better. It was fine. I went back to him. You go every certain months. He gave me another medication. I'm not very big on medication anyway. And the third time I went, he gave me a third medication that literally made me sick. Took it one time, and I was like... And I was arguing for my limitation. I was like, I'm swollen. I can't walk. I can't move. Somebody has to make accommodations for me. Well, he was 13 at the time. My 14-year-old now had to come open bottles for me. Like, I was definitely in it. And then the day that I took that medication, I was like, screw this. I don't like this. I'm not doing it anymore. And here I am a year and a half later, and I take no medication. I have no swelling, and they can take that diagnosis and shove it. But
because you chose not to buy it anymore, right?
Exactly.
Initially we do, okay, well now I understand what's wrong with me. And we also can say, I'm returning this.
Right.
I choose not to be limited by your categorization of me, the box that you choose to put me in so that it's comfortable for you, so that you can understand. And nothing is going to change in our world if people who experience ADHD and anxiety and things like that don't say, this is how I work best. And you work with me or you don't work with me, rather than going, well, I need all of these exceptions because I have this thing. Then you have turned the key in the lock on the cage.
Right.
But if we can come into society and say, okay, this is how I function. This is my brain works in this way. I need this amount of space. I need this amount of time. I am not going to live in your stress-filled, how do I work under pressure bullshit corporate ideal. And this is what I need to be a productive member of this company or this society or this job. Then things will begin to change. So the whole point of that, and we could go on this soapbox for a very long time.
Yes, we could.
Is to allow your authentic self to be whoever it is and however it wants to show up in the world, without the constrictions and limitations of labeling and categorizing and this thing and that thing, right? You're never going to allow yourself to be authentically who your soul came to be as long as you are using it as an excuse or a limitation.
Absolutely. And for some people like me, it took getting to that point where I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing this your way. I'm doing it my way. And maybe some of us need that catalyst, we could say, to get to that, like, you know, you hear the stories of the miracles and you look at like a Joe Dispenza who got the, you're never going to walk again. You've damaged your back. You can't do this. And he's like, I'm not living that way. No. And then your body can assist you once you make that switch of, if it's ADHD, okay, cool. Look at my superpower. You're going to work with me. It's almost as simple as, and I think we talked about this previously, but I'm showing up late to something instead of saying, I'm so sorry I'm late. Thank you for waiting for me. It's just that perspective, that mindset shift that will make all the difference.
Yeah. So we have to let go of the stories of the way it was or what we've been taught or conditioned to believe is, okay, well, I work this way, but in order for it to be okay and comfortable for you, I need to have a diagnosis or an excuse or a reason. And it needs to be something wrong with me.
Yes.
And that we really need to stop doing that. The world and society is set up for a very, very small percentage of the population. If you follow human design at all, you can look into this. I can't remember exactly what the number is. I want to say it's something like 5%. It's something really small of the population is that manifesting, go get it, make it happen way. And everything in our culture is set up for them. But there's only 5% of them. So if the 95% of us would stand up and go, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me, we would change the world.
Right.
So that it is inclusive of the spectrum of how we show up and how we work best and how we create and how we love and all of those things.
Yeah.
But we have to be willing to let go of the stories and the roles and the characteristics in order for our authentic self to show up fully and wholly.
Yes. And it goes back, and again, we say this in almost every episode too. Don't give your power away, because allowing somebody to give you that diagnosis and you fully taking it on, you're giving that other person your power on top of that, instead of saying, just like you said, no, switch it. I don't want to be stuck in this cage. This is my superpower. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So our next subject is dealing with criticism, and this will be pretty short and sweet because let me tell you, sweetheart, the minute you are authentically you, people will not like you. Right? You are bucking the system. You're not in your role. You're not in your character. You're not behaving as you should or supposed to. And I'm air quoting. People aren't going to like you, and they're going to criticize you. Right? And unfortunately, that still exists. We've come a long way, but it still exists, where anyone who's successful, immediately there's jealousy, envy, and we want to tear it down. And hopefully we are more inspired than critical. But the fact of the matter is, people are going to criticize you. They're not going to like what you're doing. They're not going to like that you are bucking the system, that you're saying, yeah, that role doesn't work for me. This is how I work. And we have to get used to that. We are not for everyone. It is not your job to be liked by anyone.
No.
And we have to be willing to recognize, and I think this is super important, that criticism of us, our behavior, who we are, is not about us. It's about the person who's doing the criticizing, their
Correct.
Unhealed self, their wounds,
Yes.
their traumas, their insecurities. Because when you start standing in your power and standing in your light, that's going to make people really uncomfortable
And mad.
and mad. Like, who do you think you are? And, you think you're better, right? People get very critical. And then it's time to change friends.
It is. And we said this, again, we have a lot of overlay in our, but these messages are important. And we said this previously, like, when you're searching for the authentic you, let the people around you know, I'm changing. Things are going to be different, and I'm not going to be that same person. And you choose how you want to deal with it. But
whether you want to be friends or stay in relationship or not, and that's okay.
yes,
So don't start to shrink yourself down, make yourself small because someone has criticized you and it's uncomfortable for them. Their discomfort is on them. It is their responsibility to deal with whatever unhealed thing is going on that makes them feel insecure and aggressive, even sometimes, against your showing up authentically. And so you have to be in that space of letting it be okay.
you do. Because if you don't, just like Marnie was just saying, if you shrink down and don't shine your light, you're going to end up in that cage that we were just talking about, and somebody else's cage for you.
Yeah. So you're not being authentic. So if the goal is to really show up and be who you want to be and who you are, then you have to fight for that authenticity. You have to fight for, and it doesn't have to be aggressive when I say fight, but you have to be willing to disappoint people, anger people, make people sad, make people leave, make people love you, because you'll have a whole new set of people who are like, oh, yes, you're my people. Thank you for showing up, right?
Right.
You have
Thank
to
you
be
for being
willing,
here.
have to be willing to let those things happen, which takes us into making room for
Yes.
your authentic self, like making room and space. We were talking about this idea of open tabs on the computer and having thousands of unread messages, which makes me incredibly twitchy and uncomfortable. I do not like that. The tons of notifications on my phone, I don't have notifications except for text messaging and emails.
Right.
Like, there are none on anything else because I do not like those open tabs. I don't like it. I can feel the energy literally being sucked out of me.
And this is why Marnie and I are friends, because those drive me insane too. Well, I just overheard a conversation and somebody was saying that they had like 1,000 unread text messages, and I literally started to cringe.
Right. Like, the heart starts beating faster. You start breathing funny. Yeah. Like, so we're kind of laughing about this, but we energetically in life keep a lot of tabs open.
Yes.
We put on masks in different relationships to show up in different ways for different people. Those are open tabs. That is open energy that you are keeping on reserve in arm's reach to be a particular way for a certain person. And it's draining. And you have to the only way to make room for yourself is to let all that stuff, and I kind of envision it as juggling like 10,000 balls.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You got to let the balls drop. So see that visual. There's all these balls of who you're trying to be and who you're trying to please and all of these things and all this stuff that's taking energy that feels out of alignment, that doesn't feel good to you. Let the balls drop and hit the ground. And even when you just visualize that, can you hear the quiet? And you feel the peace settle on your body, like, oh my God, I'm not like having to be 10 million things for 10 million people. and I know that's a slight exaggeration, but that's the contrast between trying to juggle all of that energy draining stuff and allowing yourself to be who you are is a huge contrast.
It is. And it, all of this stuff we're talking about is, we're going to go back to it's simple, but it's not easy.
It's not necessarily easy, right?
No, and you may struggle with some of this. Like, we're not saying, oh, you're going to flip the switch
right,
today.
Tomorrow everything will be fabulous.
Right.
We're still doing it.
Right. We are still doing. I was having a meltdown about my son this morning, and I messaged Marnie, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, and I tried X, Y, and Z, and I did something this morning that I was like, almost like a retaliation thing, or I'm not going to talk to him, and I was like, that's what my mother did to me. And I really hated that. And this feels so terrible. And I was like, oh, no, I can't do that anymore.
But that's the key to this work is, right, okay, I tried this. Oh, wait, that didn't feel good. That's not authentic. I choose not to do that again, right? There's the growth.
Yes.
That's the huge leap forward into ascension and progression as a human, is being like, okay, that didn't work. That didn't feel good. We have to be awake and conscious and paying attention. Well, when you have 10,000 tabs open,
it's hard to do that.
It's hard to pay attention. You're so busy juggling the energy and the time and managing everyone and everything and yourself that you don't have time to pay attention. So you have to close the tabs.
You do. And, it's funny, this just popped into my mind. The commercials, I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I literally have no commercials on my television.
Okay.
I refuse to watch commercials.
I don't typically, but I've seen this one a couple of times, and it's like a depression medication commercial.
Oh, God.
And she carries around this little stick with a smiley face on it, and she holds it up. Like, she's going into a social situation and she doesn't feel like being there and doesn't want to be there, so she holds up this smiley face.
This is so sad.
It is. But that's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Like, you do not have to do that.
Yeah.
You don't want to go, don't go.
Right.
But it's stepping into that and figuring out how to do this. And I'm making fun of the commercial. I'm not talking about somebody with depression that needs tools. I'm just saying, like, this smiley face
idea
thing that you're holding up to make everybody think that you're okay.
Right. Well, it's like when a man tells a woman, you be prettier if you smile. I swear to God, I'm going to punch a man if he ever says that to me. But we've been conditioned to, we hear those kinds of things and we think, oh, something's wrong with me. I need to do something to accommodate you. So it's the same thing. We're talking about accommodating for other people to make them comfortable. And yeah, no.
No. You can't. I mean, you can. We don't want you to.
Well, you can, and then you're not going to be authentic.
And it's not going to feel good. And that's what Marnie was just saying. You're going to know the difference because you're going to feel it. Just like how I was this morning. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And then I was like, oh God, I never want to do that again, ever, to anyone.
Right. Yeah. So that goes back to the roles of, well, you should behave. There is retaliation. This behavior deserves this kind of reaction. And we get into that dance and that game of action, reaction, rather than proceeding through decision and conscious action. Mm-hmm. And, that can't happen if we're buying into the roles, if we're too worried about criticism, if we have no space for ourselves. All of those things can't happen.
No, they can't.
Yeah. So the reason we called this the final-ish mission is because this is an ongoing journey. I feel like I'm pretty confident in sitting here, saying to you, I live authentically. I choose to move through the world in an authentic way. And I'm still always going over all of these things that we have talked about, boundaries and communication and being conscious and all the things that we've discussed, self-care. And so it's a continual evolvement in who you are and rediscovering. And also, and I think I talked about this in the very beginning, we are constantly changing. From the moment we are conceived, we are in a state of growth and change. It's a human natural state. Anything that's living is in a state of constant transformation and growth. And so to think that you can do all of these things and, okay, now I'm authentic and I never have to address this again is delusional. It's delusional. We will continue to grow and address these things and meet a new person who needs a boundary, and we'll need to come back to self-care. We're going to constantly be coming back to them. So the mission is the quest is a continual journey of evaluating, reevaluating, making new choices, changing.
Yeah, it's
getting into alignment.
Your ascending spiral.
My ascending spiral.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So there's actually 10 episodes in this series, which I think covers most of the questions and sort of bumps in the road and challenges that we experience on this journey. Hopefully you have found it helpful. If you have not listened to the other ones, they're all titled Mission something. So those missions are part of the Quest series. And it is a continual process. And there are people like Natalie and I who are soul coaches. We are here to challenge you when you are fighting for your limitations.
Yes, we are.
We are here to redirect and refocus and empower you to come back to that authentic self, which isn't complicated or messy.
Correct.
Or difficult. All of those things are the roles and the layers and the crap we've bought into. Our authentic self is actually quite simple.
Yes.
It's the act of trying to fit it into a particular category or box that creates the problem. So it's hard to see that sometimes we're in our own mess. Natalie and I are the same way. Sometimes we're so blinded by our own mess that we cannot see the forest for the trees, right?
Right.
And so using coaches and energy workers to help you navigate, to help you refocus and remember. And I think it's truly about remembering who you are.
Yes. I think it is too. And, the other part of Marnie and I is, as we just said, we're going through it too. We have all of these things. We have to be reminded. We have, luckily, each other to talk to. But that's why our clients come and see us. So the point of this is, if you're struggling, if you need help, reach out. Yeah. We're here. We're available.
You don't have to struggle.
You do not have to struggle.
For sure.
No.
So, yeah, we're available. We're here. And then the last thing we wanted to talk about is the reason this was a culmination. Also, ironically, it's the 22nd episode of Musings from the Mystics, which, master number, I'm all about that.
Yes.
I'm all about that. We have decided to go to once a month. And Natalie and I have been talking a lot about this, and an awareness that has just come for me is that there's a lot of noise out there. There's a ton of podcasts. There's a ton of gurus and coaches online. My Instagram feed is full of amazing things, this quote and that quote and advice and how do you do this and how do you do that? And it's a lot of noise, and I find I'm overwhelmed by the noise. Do you find that as well?
I think it's not only overwhelming, it's still, you have to pick and choose through it too of what resonates for you. So
but it gets, for me, it's overwhelming so quickly that I just...
You don't even, right, you're done.
Right. I have a capacity of absorption, right? Yeah. There's only so much information, only so much advice, only so many hints and tips and tricks that I can listen to before I shut down. I go into, I'm a freeze. My response is freeze. I completely freeze. And I know for me, and I'm not speaking for Natalie, but for me, I do not want to be part of the noise anymore. For me, it is important that my words, my thoughts cut through the noise, that it becomes a safe and quiet space to hear and to receive for those of you out there. And so we have decided everything is going to once a month. My love letter that I send out is once a month. My meditations will be once a month. Our podcast will be once a month. It will come out on the first of the month. Easy to remember. It's the first. Cool. Let me go see what they've talked about. Let me go see what they have to say. That gives us time to also evaluate what's going on. And as leaders and healers, we often receive things sort of ahead of the curve. I feel the energy before it sort of hits the population. And so that gives me space to think about, to compose, to what kind of downloads can come in and how can I bring that to you in a way that's going to serve you in the moment versus let me give you this tidbit and that tidbit and this tidbit and that tidbit, and maybe you're not in that space.
Right.
So this length of time in between gives us time to, whatever we bring to you will be poignant and important and impactful right now for you.
And it goes along with, I agree with, even though you weren't speaking for me, I agree with what you said, but it also goes along with typically our clients. Like if we move to once a month, typically if I see 5 different clients in a week, like I had a week where every client was an emergency, I need to see you today kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they were struggling with something. So that would be like, typically, even if we feel it ahead of time, we also get our clients coming in with it. So
all have the same sort of issue at the same time.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that gives us a better chance to prepare for something like that as well.
Yeah.
And we've asked for comments and likes and shares and subscribes, and nobody's answering us as to what they want. So if there is, like, you see value in maybe in every other week or once a month isn't enough, we'd love to hear about it. We don't get a lot of feedback, which we would like.
We would. So we're not just talking to the air. The point of the work we do, and I think I can speak for her here, is to serve, is to help empower you to do the work, to move through, to ascend on that spiral. That's really both of our goals is to help and to serve. And so we want to make sure that that's what we're doing and that we are not contributing to the noise, but cutting through it.
Yes.
And so that's really my vision right now. And it seems like this sort of not very clear, not very pointed, like, here's my goal to cut through the noise. What does that even mean? I don't know. I'm discovering that, but that was a very clear message for me. And I lead by example. Mm-hmm. I don't talk about all this stuff and not do it. I do all this stuff and talk about it.
Right.
And I think Natalie is the same way. And so right now I've been in this pause for a while, and what I noticed was there's a lot of noise, and I don't want to be part of that. I'm not trying to have 10 million followers and everybody liking my stuff. I want to make a difference.
Right.
I want it to be impactful. And it doesn't matter if there's only 50 people listening to us. If we're making a difference in your life, then I am doing my job.
Absolutely.
So that is the reason for the going to once a month. And it will be about whatever we're experiencing, whatever is going on, and how can we serve and help you in the best way possible.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah. So we hope you've enjoyed the series.
Yes. We have, actually.
Yes. It's been interesting and fun, kind of wrapping it all into something that makes sense and hopefully was helpful for you. So again, please do follow, comment, share, and we will see you September 1st.